Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of the Stone Age. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of rough stone and dying embers, breathing slow beneath a heavy night mist, will drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly. And let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of the Stone Age come to you. Long before any map was drawn, the shape of the world was still shifting. The land we now call Britain was once firmly attached to the rest of Europe. A vast icy lake sat quietly in the north. Then, the ice holding that water finally broke. A massive flood tore through the landscape. The rushing water carved a deep, white chalk valley. It uprooted ancient trees and swept away the soil. This single, violent event permanently severed the land bridge. It created the deep waters of the English Channel. You can almost picture the sheer force of that day. The roaring water eventually settled into a steady tide. The newly formed island was left in quiet isolation. The chalk cliff stood as a bright white scar against the grey water. The land was forever changed by the sudden weight of the sea. The world simply reshaped itself and moved on. Deep in the ancient forests of Germany, early humans learned to work with the trees. They did not just break branches to use as crude tools. They understood the wood itself. To make a hunting spear, they sought out tall, straight spruce trees. They knew the wood at the base of the trunk was the hardest. They carefully carved their weapons from this dense lower section. They did not even need fire to harden the tips. The natural strength of the spruce was enough. They shaped the wood until it was perfectly balanced. The spears were heavy at the front and tapered at the back. They flew straight and true through the cool forest air. It was a quiet, deliberate craft. Someone sat in the dappled light, smoothing the wood for hours. They turned a simple tree into a tool of survival. The forest provided exactly what they needed. The journey across the deep waters of Indonesia required a new kind of courage. For thousands of years, humans had only walked across solid ground. but the islands of Wallacea were separated by deep, dark ocean trenches. No land bridge would ever connect them. To reach the unknown shores, someone had to build the first seaworthy boat. They lashed together bamboo and vines to make simple rafts. They pushed away from the safe, familiar beaches. They trusted the currents and the wind to carry them. The water beneath them was impossibly deep and blue. They drifted under the bright tropical sun, watching the horizon. This was a monumental leap in human thought. The ocean was no longer a barrier. It became a path to new worlds. They rode the gentle swells toward lush, green islands. The sound of water lapping against bamboo was the sound of human progress. The vast landscapes of Australia were not just wild and untouched. They were carefully shaped by human hands. Early Aboriginal people walked through the dry eucalyptus forests with a deep understanding of the land. They practiced a gentle art known as fire stick farming. They set small, controlled fires in the dry grass. The low flames crept slowly across the ground. The smoke drifted quietly through the tall trees. These small burns cleared away the tangled underbrush. They opened up the forest floor to the sunlight. The ash fed the soil, encouraging fresh green shoots to grow. This new growth attracted animals, making hunting much easier. The people were not destroying the forest. They were tending to it like a massive open garden. The ecology of the entire continent shifted over time. The land and the people learned to rely on the steady, renewing rhythm of the fire. The deep cold of the Ice Age kept humans away from the far north for a long time. Survival in Siberia required more than just a warm fire. It required a tiny, quiet invention. Deep inside a cave, someone carved a small sliver of bone. They pierced a tiny hole in one end. This was the first needle. It seems like such a simple thing today, but it changed the map of human settlement forever. With a needle and some animal sinew, people could sew hides tightly together. They could create warm, multi-layered clothing that fit perfectly. The bitter wind could no longer reach their skin. They could finally step out into the freezing tundra. They followed the animal herds into the deep Arctic snow. A tiny piece of carved bone opened up a frozen world. It allowed humans to make a home in the coldest places on Earth. In the damp caves of East Asia, another quiet revolution took shape around a glowing hearth. Someone noticed how wet clay hardened when it was left near the flames. They shaped the soft earth into a simple, rough bowl. They placed it directly into the hot embers. The fire baked the clay until it was solid and waterproof. This was the very first pottery. It completely changed how people lived. They no longer had to eat their food immediately. They could store surplus grains safely away from pests. They could fill the clay pots with water and tough roots. They boiled the roots into warm, nourishing stews. The smell of cooking food filled the cool cave air. A simple bowl of baked mud offered comfort and security. It meant they could survive the lean winter months. The earth itself was molded to hold the warmth of the fire. The journey to the Americas did not begin with a daring ocean voyage. It began with a long, quiet walk. During the peak of the Ice Age, so much water was locked in glaciers that the oceans shrank. The sea level dropped drastically. A massive stretch of land emerged between Siberia and Alaska. This was Beringia, a frozen, wind-swept tundra, 1,000 miles wide. It was covered in pale winter sunlight and tough grasses. Small groups of nomadic hunters wrapped themselves in thick furs. They simply walked across the new land. They followed the slow, heavy footsteps of grazing mammoths. They had no idea they were crossing between two vast continents. They were just looking for the next meal. The cold wind pushed them ever eastward. When the ice finally melted, the sea rose and swallowed the path behind them. The new world was theirs to explore. The snowy forests of Europe were a lonely place for early hunters, but a new kind of partnership was slowly forming in the cold woods. Wild wolves began to linger near human camps. They stayed just out of the firelight, waiting for discarded scraps of meat. Over many generations, the boldest wolves learned to tolerate the humans. The humans, in turn, saw the value of these sharp-eared animals. The wolves became dogs. They became loyal hunting partners. A hunter could walk through the pale winter sunlight with a dog by their side. The dog could track scents that humans could never find. They could corner fast prey and hold it at bay. The dynamic of the hunt changed completely. Humans and dogs learned to read each other's silent cues. They shared the warmth of the fire and the spoils of the chase. A lasting friendship was born in the snow. The great ice sheets that covered Scandinavia finally began to melt and pull back. As the heavy ice retreated, the bare earth saw the sun again. The landscape slowly transformed into a vast, open tundra. Tough grasses and low shrubs pushed through the rocky soil. This new, cold pasture attracted massive herds of migrating reindeer. The animals moved north in huge numbers, their hooves clicking softly on the frozen ground. The people of the Arensberg culture followed right behind them. They packed up their skin tents and moved into the newly thawed lands. They relied on the reindeer for everything. The herds provided meat, warm hides, and bone for tools. The pale northern light, guided their long journeys. They were the first settlers of a rugged, beautiful frontier. They walked into a landscape that had been buried under ice for thousands of years. The world was opening up again. The shift from wandering to settling down was not a gentle choice. In the dry valleys of the Levant, the climate suddenly turned harsh. A centuries-long cold snap, known as the Younger Dryas, chilled the air. Unexpected snow dusted the hillsides. The wild fruits and nuts that people relied on began to die off. The nomadic foragers could no longer wander freely to find food. They had to retreat to the few places with reliable, flowing water. They clustered together in small settlements of round brush huts. To survive, they had to protect the few wild grains that still grew. They started to actively tend to the plants. They watered them and kept the weeds away. This desperate need for food sparked the very beginning of agriculture. The cold forced them to stay in one place. They learned to coax life from the freezing, stubborn earth. Not everyone had to invent farming to build a permanent home. In the warm valleys of the Near East, the Natufian people found a perfect balance. Their environment was incredibly rich and forgiving. Vast fields of tall wild grasses swayed in the evening breeze. The land offered so much wild grain that the people never had to move. They achieved something very rare for hunter-gatherers. They built permanent villages of round, semi-subterranean stone houses. They topped them with thick brush roofs. They could simply walk outside and gather all the food they needed. They ground the wild seeds on heavy stone mortars. They lived a settled life without ever planting a single crop. The warm evening light bathed their quiet stone homes. They found a rare pocket of abundance in a changing world. They proved that a rich landscape could hold a community together, all on its own. The entire course of human history turned on a tiny, invisible accident. In the rolling hills of Turkey, wild wheat grew in the golden sunlight. Normally, when wild wheat ripens, the stalks shatter. The wind scatters the seeds far and wide. This makes it nearly impossible to harvest in large amounts. But one day, a random genetic mutation occurred in a single patch of wheat. The new plants held tightly to their seeds, even after they ripened. Early humans noticed this strange, sturdy grass. They gently harvested the heavy stalks with flint sickles. They carried the seeds back to their camps and planted them the next year. This simple mutation allowed humans to grow and harvest their own food reliably. It was the quiet birth of true farming. A tiny flaw in a wild plant eventually built the foundation for every city on Earth. As the world warmed, the giant animals of the Ice Age slowly vanished. The massive mammoths were replaced by smaller, much faster game. Deer and wild boar darted through the dense new forests. Human hunters had to adapt quickly to survive. They could no longer rely on heavy, thrusting spears. They needed lighter, faster weapons. Beside a misty lake in England, they invented the microlith. These were tiny, razor-sharp flakes of stone. The hunters carefully embedded these small blades into wooden shafts. They used sticky tree resin to hold the stones in place. This created deadly arrows and barbed harpoons. The new weapons were perfect for catching quick animals in the thick woods. The hunters sat quietly by the water, crafting their delicate tools in the overcast light. The world had grown smaller and faster. The tools of survival had to shrink and sharpen to keep up. The changing climate forced people to look closer at the ground and the water. Large animals were becoming scarce across the rocky coasts of Greece. The people living in deep coastal caves had to change their habits. They began to eat almost anything they could find. This shift changed human diets forever. They gathered tiny snails from the damp rocks. They collected nuts and trapped small birds in the brush. They wove long nets from plant fibers to catch small fish in the shallow waves. They dragged the heavy nets onto the bright, sunlit beaches. They invented heavy grinding stones to crush tough seeds and roots. They learned to extract nourishment from the smallest sources. This was a quiet revolution of necessity. They paid close attention to every living thing around them. The struggle to find food taught them the hidden secrets of the shoreline. Farming was a miracle, but crops could not grow everywhere. In the steep, rocky highlands of Iran, the soil was too thin for wheat. The slopes were harsh and unforgiving. But humans found another way to harvest energy from the barren landscape. They began to tame the wild sheep and goats that roamed the high passes. These tough animals could easily digest the scrubby mountain plants. They turned dry, useless weeds into rich milk and heavy meat. A shepherd could guide a small flock along a narrow, rocky trail. The golden hour sunlight warmed the dusty path. The animals climbed where humans could barely walk. They transformed a desolate mountain range into a productive territory. The people learned to move with the herds, following the seasonal grasses. They found a way to thrive in a place that seemed completely empty. The mountains became a home. The location of an early city was often decided by the simplest of needs. On a flat plain in Turkey, a massive settlement grew beside a vast wetland. The people did not just settle there for the water. They stayed for the mud. The reedy marsh provided an endless supply of high-quality clay. They needed this specific clay to build their homes. They packed the mud into thick, sturdy bricks and baked them in the sun. They built their flat-roofed houses tightly against one another. There were no streets. People walked across the roofs to get around. The mud brick walls required constant repair to survive the weather. Every day, figures carried woven baskets of wet clay from the marsh. The afternoon sun baked the fresh mud onto the old walls. The city was literally pulled from the swamp, handful by handful, year after year. The first great trade networks were not built on gold or silver. They were built on a dark, glassy stone. On a rugged volcanic island in Greece, the beaches were covered in obsidian. When struck correctly, this volcanic glass fractures into edges sharper than modern steel. Early humans prized this stone above almost everything else. They needed it for cutting tools and weapons. People traveled across the bright blue Mediterranean just to get it. They pulled small wooden boats onto the rocky shores. They traded woven baskets and rare goods for the dark stones. The morning sun caught the sharp edges of the glass. This desire for obsidian connected isolated communities across hundreds of miles. It forced people to learn the currents and navigate the open water. A simple, sharp rock laid the foundation for long-distance economies. The world slowly began to trade its secrets. The map of the northern world used to look very different. A vast, marshy plain once stretched far out into the sea. This huge expanse of land was a paradise for hunter-gatherers. They tracked animals through the tall grasses and camped by slow-moving rivers. But the world was warming, and the ice caps were melting. The sea level began to rise, inch by inch, year after year. It was not a sudden disaster but a slow, unstoppable drowning. The ocean crept into the lowlands, turning hunting grounds into salty swamps. The people were forced to pack up their twilight campfires. They slowly retreated to higher ground as the water followed them. Eventually, the entire plain vanished beneath the cold waves. The land became the bottom of the North Sea. The physical separation of the island was complete. The water simply erased a world that had thrived for generations. The rising oceans eventually breached the natural dams of the world. A massive freshwater lake once sat deep in a forested basin. It was cut off from the rising Mediterranean by a narrow strip of rock. But the pressure of the ocean finally became too much. The rocky strait broke open with a deafening roar. A colossal waterfall cascaded into the lower basin. The salt water flooded the green valleys below. Dark storm clouds gathered over the churning rising sea. The coastal settlements were swallowed by the rapid floodwaters. The people living on the shores had to flee for their lives. They grabbed what they could and migrated deep into the European interior. This sudden disaster pushed early farmers into new territories. They brought their seeds and their animals with them. A catastrophic flood accidentally accelerated the spread of agriculture across an entire continent. The landscape of Central Europe was once covered in a dense, primeval forest. Massive oak trees blocked the sunlight from reaching the ground. But the arrival of early farmers changed the horizon forever. They needed open fields to grow their wheat. They brought with them a simple, powerful tool. They used heavy stone axes, polished until they were perfectly smooth. With these stone blades, they began to fell the giant trees. It was slow, exhausting work in the dappled sunlight. They cleared vast tracts of woodland, one tree at a time. The sound of stone striking wood echoed through the quiet valleys. They burned the stumps and planted their crops in the ash-rich soil. They permanently transformed the dark forests into open, sunlit agricultural landscapes. The rolling farm fields we see today were carved out by hand. The deep woods slowly gave way to the harvest. The coastline of South America holds a very strange architectural secret. For thousands of years, people living by the sea ate oysters and clams. After every meal, they tossed the empty shells into a pile. Over countless generations, these simple piles grew into massive, towering hills. These artificial mountains of white shell permanently altered the profile of the coast. They gleamed brightly under the midday tropical sun. The people eventually began to use these high, dry hills for their own benefit. They built their small huts on the very top of the mounds. The shell hills kept them safely above the high tides and storm surges. They buried their dead within the layers of crushed white shell. The landscape was literally built from the leftovers of their daily lives. A simple, repetitive habit slowly engineered a completely new geography. The coast was shaped by their dinners. The largest desert on Earth was not always a sea of sand. Long before the first pharaohs ruled, North Africa was a lush, green savanna. Huge, shallow lakes mirrored the bright midday sun. Early humans walked through tall grasses, hunting alongside grazing megafauna. It was a vibrant, living landscape. But the Earth is always moving. A subtle, slow shift in the planet's orbit changed the path of the monsoon rains. The water simply stopped falling. The lake slowly evaporated into cracked mud. The tall grasses withered, and the sand took over. The green savanna turned into a harsh, endless desert. The people and the animals had to flee the drying plains. They migrated eastward, clustering desperately along the life-saving waters of the Nile River. The death of the Green Sahara forced a scattered population together. The desert's expansion gave birth to one of the greatest civilizations. The rule of history usually says that people must farm to build a village. But the islands of Japan offered a different path. The coastal waters and the deep woods were incredibly generous. The Jomon people found a landscape overflowing with food. The bays were packed with fish and shellfish. The dense forests dropped thousands of heavy chestnuts every autumn. The people had so much food that they never needed to plant a field. They built large, permanent villages of thatched pit houses. They set up wooden racks to dry their fish in the soft morning mist. They lived in one place for thousands of years, perfectly content with what the wild earth provided. They crafted beautiful, intricate pottery to store their massive harvests of nuts. They proved that agriculture was not the only way to settle down. Sometimes, the land just takes care of you. The high mountains of the continent were once an impassable wall of ice. The deep valleys were completely isolated from one another. But the climate goes through natural cycles of warming. Thousands of years ago, the heavy alpine glaciers began to melt and pull back. The harsh sunlight exposed bare rock that had been hidden for centuries. This melting revealed high-altitude mountain passes for the very first time. People quickly realized they could walk over the roof of the world. Rugged travelers wrapped themselves in woven grass and thick animal skins. They braved the snowy passes to carry goods between the isolated valleys. These new, freezing trails became vital trade routes. Ideas and tools finally crossed the Great Mountain Divide. The melting ice connected communities that had never known each other existed. The shifting climate briefly opened a door in the ice, and humanity walked right through it. On the rugged, windy coast of Scotland, a small village sat near the sea. The people there built everything from flat slabs of stone. They made stone beds, stone shelves and heavy stone hearths. One day, the sky darkened with a fierce, unnatural storm. The wind howled off the ocean, carrying tons of thick, heavy sand. The storm blew so hard and so fast that the village was buried almost instantly. The people fled, leaving their tools and their homes behind. The low stone dwellings were swallowed by a massive dune. The dim, stormy daylight faded into total darkness. But this sudden disaster was also a miracle of preservation. The thick sand sealed the village perfectly. It protected the stone furniture from the rain and the wind for 5 millennia. The storm froze a single day in time. It kept the quiet village safe under the earth. The oldest temples on Earth were not lost to time. They were hidden on purpose. In southern Turkey, the massive stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe stand in the dark. Builders carved them with rich shapes of scorpions and foxes. Then, they did something strange. They buried their own work. They carried thousands of tons of earth and rubble to the site. They covered the tall, T-shaped stones completely. This act hid the site for thousands of years. You can almost feel the weight of that choice. The builders packed the dirt tightly around the carvings. They sealed the temple away from the sun and wind. We do not know why they chose to hide it. Perhaps the burial was part of a sacred closing rite. The earth kept the stones safe from the weather. Today the sharp edges of the carvings look fresh. The dirt held their secret perfectly. Not far away, another ancient structure reaches up, instead of down. Hidden inside the old walls of Jericho is a massive stone tower. It is over 10,000 years old. This makes it one of the earliest pieces of grand building work in the world. The tower is shaped like a wide cone. It is made of rough stones, stacked with great care. Inside the thick walls, there is a steep, dark staircase. The builders formed the steps from huge slabs of solid rock. The stairs are fully enclosed in the stone. Climbing them feels like moving through a narrow cave. You can imagine the cool air trapped inside the shaft. The builders had no metal tools to shape these heavy blocks. They relied on pure strength and deep patience. The tower stands as a quiet mark of human will. It shows a sudden desire to build toward the sky. As people began to settle, their towns took on strange new shapes. The ancient site of Çatalhöyük in Turkey had no streets at all. There were no doors on the ground level. Instead, the mud brick houses were built tightly against each other. They formed a solid block of homes. To get around, residents simply walked across the flat roofs. The roof was the main street of the city. When someone wanted to go inside, they climbed down a wooden ladder. The ladder dropped through a square hatch in the ceiling. This hatch let in light and let out smoke from the hearth. You can picture the evening routine. Neighbors would sit on their roofs as the sun went down. The whole town lived above the ground. This dense layout kept the community close and safe. The shared walls held the heat during cold nights. It was a city of rooftops. Other early towns found different ways to feel secure. On the island of Cyprus, the village of Kirakitia sits on a quiet hillside. The people here were peaceful farmers. Yet they built a massive stone wall all the way around their homes. The wall is over 8 feet thick. It is made of heavy river stones, gathered from the valley below. This kind of grand defense is very rare for a farming town of this age. The thick wall curves gently around a cluster of round, flat-roofed houses. You can see how much effort went into stacking the heavy rocks. The builders wanted a clear line between their safe homes and the wild world outside. The wall blocked the strong winds that blew off the sea. It gave the village a deep sense of calm. Inside the stone ring, daily life moved at a slow and steady pace. Sometimes the sea reclaims what early builders made. Off the coast of Israel, the village of Atlit Yam rests under the waves. It is a perfectly preserved town from the Stone Age. The cold salt water has kept the ruins safe for thousands of years. Divers can still see the straight walls of rectangular stone houses. There is a deep stone well in the center of the town. Near the edge of the site, a strange half-circle of standing stones rests on the ocean floor. Long ago, this village sat in the bright sun on dry land. People drew fresh water from the well. They gathered near the tall stones for quiet rites. Then the ice caps melted, and the sea level slowly rose. The water crept into the streets and filled the homes. The people had to leave. Now, fish swim through the open doors of the sunken houses. Builders often look to nature to shape their homes. In Serbia, the houses of Lepenski Vir sit on the bank of a wide river. The floor plan of every house is very specific. They are all shaped like a trapezoid. This was not a random choice. If you stand in the village and look across the water, you see a large cliff. The cliff face has the exact same trapezoid shape. The builders designed their homes to mirror the mountain across the river. They tied their daily lives to the shape of the land. The sloping roofs of the houses echo the steep sides of the cliff. You can feel a deep bond between the people and the valley. They did not just build on the earth. They built with it in mind. The river flowed past their doors, and the mountain watched over them. The design honors the quiet landscape. In places with harsh weather, the home itself becomes a fortress. On the windy coast of Scotland, the stone dwellings of Skara Brae sit low in the earth. There were no trees here to provide wood. So the builders used flat slabs of local stone for everything. The architecture actually doubles as the furniture. They built beds, dressers and shelves directly into the thick walls. The interior layout is permanent and cannot be moved. You can still see the stone boxes where they slept. They likely filled these beds with soft heather and animal skins. A glowing peat fire burned in the center of the room. The stone shelves held their tools and bowls. The heavy walls blocked the howling wind from the sea. Inside, the space was warm, tight and safe. The stone furniture has lasted for 5,000 years. It gives us a clear look at their daily rest. Not all ancient stone was left bare and grey. The Ness of Brodgar was a massive site for gatherings in Scotland. The builders made the outer walls up to 13 feet thick, but the inside of the complex held a bright surprise. The interior stone walls were painted with rich colors. The people used natural pigments to create vibrant reds, blacks and yellows. They painted bold patterns across the rough rock. This shows us that early architecture was actually highly colorful. The bright walls would have glowed warmly in the firelight. You can imagine the shadows dancing across the red and yellow shapes. The thick walls kept the cold out, while the paint made the space feel alive. The colors brought warmth to the heavy stone rooms. Time and rain have washed most of the paint away, but tiny traces still cling to the rocks, hinting at a bright past. Some structures were built to capture the light of the sky. In Ireland, the Passage Tomb of Newgrange is a true masterwork of early engineering. It looks like a massive grassy mound from the outside, but the inside holds a deep secret. The builders aligned the long stone hallway with perfect care. For just a few days around the winter solstice, something magic happens. The rising sun clears the horizon and shines straight down the main corridor. A narrow beam of golden light pierces the dark. It travels all the way to the burial chamber, deep inside the mound. The light hits a carved spiral on the back wall. For a few minutes, the cold stone room glows with warmth. Then the sun moves, and the chamber goes dark for another year. The builders planned this exact moment. They tied the resting place of their dead to the turning year. Other monuments stand open to the wind and rain. On the stark limestone plains of the Burren, the Pulnabron dolmen rests in the quiet landscape. It is a striking tomb made of massive rocks. The builders managed to lift a huge, sloping capstone high into the air. They balanced this heavy roof on two slender, upright pillars. The stones look like they might fall, but they are perfectly stable. This delicate balance creates a quiet, enduring sanctuary. The structure has stood firm for nearly 6,000 years. You can see the sky through the gaps in the stones. The grey rock matches the cracked limestone ground all around it. The builders chose this lonely spot with care. The tomb looks like a natural part of the rocky earth. It is a simple, bold statement left behind by ancient hands. The wind whistles through the stone legs as the sun sets. Some ancient builders worked on a scale that is hard to grasp. The temples of Gantia in Malta are older than the pyramids. They were built using colossal blocks of rough limestone. Some of these massive stones weigh up to 50 tons. The builders moved them without wheels or metal tools. They fitted the huge rocks together perfectly without using any mortar. The floor plan of the temple is shaped like a complex cloverleaf. The curving walls rise high into the blue sky. You can walk through the rounded rooms and feel the sheer weight of the stone. The walls lean inward slightly, creating a sense of deep shelter. The rough texture of the limestone catches the warm evening light. The sheer size of the blocks makes you wonder how many hands it took to lift them. The temple stands as a quiet mountain of human effort. Sometimes the stones do not form a building at all. Stretching across the green fields of France are the Karnak stones. This is an astonishing sight of over 3,000 standing rocks. The builders arranged them in perfectly straight parallel rows. The lines of stone run for miles across the quiet countryside. The exact purpose of this massive project is still a mystery. The stones vary in size. Some are small, while others tower over the grass. They march over hills and dip into shallow valleys. You can walk between the rows and feel a strange sense of order. The morning mist often settles around the bases of the rocks. The alignment must have taken generations to plan and build. It is a vast map drawn on the earth with heavy granite. The stones stand like silent watchers, keeping a secret that faded away thousands of years ago. The effort to move sacred stones could span vast distances. The inner circle of Stonehenge in England is made of special rocks called bluestones. These stones were not found anywhere near the grassy plain. The builders brought them all the way from the Preseli Hills in Wales. This was a staggering journey of over 150 miles. They used only simple tools made of wood and bone. They dragged the heavy rocks on wooden rollers over rough ground. They likely floated them on rafts down winding rivers. You can imagine the slow, painful progress of the stones. Each mile was a massive test of strength and will. The blue tint of the rock must have been deeply important to them. They wanted these specific stones for the heart of their monument. The long journey gave the rocks a special power before they were even stood upright. The desire for special stone drove people to dangerous heights. The polished stone axes of the Langdale industry were highly prized. But the rock used to make them was not easy to reach. The makers quarried the green stone from the sheer volcanic peaks of the English Lake District. They climbed high up the dangerous windy cliffs to chip away the rock. They ignored the safe, easy stones in the valleys below. The perilous location seemed to add great value to the axes. You can picture the workers clinging to the steep rock face. The misty valleys stretched out far below their feet. They struck the cliff with heavy hammers to break off the perfect pieces. The green volcanic rock was tough and beautiful. An axe made from this high peak carried the story of the dangerous climb. The risk of the mountain was carved right into the smooth stone. While some climbed high for stone, others dug deep into the dark. At Grimes Graves in England, a vast network of flint mines lies underground. The miners dug deep shafts through solid white chalk. Some of these narrow holes dropped 40 feet into the earth. They did not have metal shovels. They dug through the hard ground, using only picks made from red deer antlers. You can see the scrape marks of the antlers on the chalk walls today. The miners climbed down into the dark with small lamps burning animal fat. They crawled through tight tunnels to find dark nodules of sharp flint. The air down there is cool, damp, and perfectly still. The work was slow, dirty, and very hard. They chipped away at the white rock, hour after hour. The dark flint they pulled from the earth was the sharpest tool of their time. Even in simple tents, early people found clever ways to stay warm. The Magdalenian culture lived in skin tents in France. They engineered highly efficient hearths inside their homes. They did not just build a fire on the dirt. Instead, they arranged flat, smooth river stones around the fire pit. When the fire burned, these rocks absorbed the intense heat. Long after the flames died down, the stones kept working. They radiated a soft, steady warmth back into the tent. You can imagine the quiet hours of the night. The glowing embers slowly faded to black. But the ring of river stones stayed hot to the touch. The family could sleep soundly while the rocks fought off the cold air. This simple trick turned a basic fire into a lasting heater. The smooth stones held the memory of the fire until the sun came up again. In places with no trees or stones, builders used whatever they could find. On the frozen plains of Ukraine, early humans built homes out of bone. They constructed intricate, dome-shaped huts entirely from the remains of mammoths. They used interlocking jawbones to form a solid base. They curved the long ribs to make the sloping walls. They used massive, heavy tusks to frame the low entrances. You can picture these pale white domes, sitting on the snowy ground. The builders covered the bone frames with thick animal hides to block the wind. The massive bones were incredibly strong and heavy. Gathering them required great skill and teamwork. Inside the hut, the air was warm and thick with smoke. The curved ribs arched overhead like the inside of a great ship. The people turned the giants of the ice into safe, quiet shelters against the bitter winter cold. The earth itself can be the best blanket against the cold. To survive harsh winters, the Jomon culture in Japan built deep pit houses. They dug large circular holes straight down into the soil. Then, they roofed the pits with heavy timber and thick thatch. By living below the surface, they used the ground as natural insulation. The earth trapped the heat from their fires, and kept the freezing winds away. You can imagine stepping down into one of these homes. The air instantly feels warmer and calmer. Smoke rises slowly from a central hole in the thatched roof. The dirt walls are packed hard and smooth. Outside, the snow piles up high against the sloping roof. But inside, the family sits comfortably around the glowing hearth. The deep pit wraps around them like a warm hug. The frozen world stays safely above their heads. As farming grew, homes became much larger to fit more life inside. In Central Europe, the people of Bilony lived in massive timber longhouses. Some of these wooden buildings stretched up to 150 feet long. They housed extended families and all their livestock under a single roof. The builders used thick wooden posts to support an enormous, pitched roof of thatch. You can walk the length of the dirt floor and feel the vast size of the space. The animals lived at one end, adding their body heat to the home. The families cooked and slept at the other end. The high roof trapped the warm air inside. The thick timber posts stood like a small forest in the dim light. Building such a huge structure took the effort of the whole village. The longhouse was a whole community living together under one giant wooden sky. Working with wood allowed people to conquer wet and muddy ground. Buried in the dark peat of Starcar in England is a special wooden structure. It is the oldest known piece of carpentry in Europe. Builders made a massive timber platform right on the edge of a shallow lake. They split large logs and laid them down carefully over the muddy reeds. This created a dry, flat working surface above the wet ground. You can picture the workers sitting on the wooden planks. They chipped flint tools and repaired their fishing nets. The split logs kept their feet out of the cold mud. The wood was preserved perfectly by the wet, oxygen-free peat. The platform shows a deep understanding of how to shape timber. They did not just accept the muddy shore. They built a clean, dry floor right on top of the swamp. Sometimes, wood was used to build a path through danger. The Sweet Track is the oldest known engineered roadway in the world. It was built across a treacherous, foggy marsh in the Somerset Levels. The builders drove a complex system of crossed wooden poles deep into the mud. These poles formed an X shape to hold the path steady. Then, they laid a continuous walkway of flat oak planks right into the crosses. This raised the road safely above the dark water. You can imagine walking along the narrow oak boards. The thick fog rolls over the reeds on both sides. The wooden path bounces slightly under your feet. The builders knew exactly how to span the dangerous swamp. They created a safe bridge between two islands of dry land. The wet mud eventually swallowed the track, keeping the oak plank safe and hidden for thousands of years. In some places, people built their own islands to stay safe. In the quiet lochs of Scotland, early communities constructed the first crannogs. These are small, artificial islands, built right in the shallow water. The builders carefully piled heavy stones and thick timber onto the lake bed. They kept stacking the rocks until a solid foundation rose above the surface. Then, they built their round homes on top of this new land. You can see the appeal of living out on the water. The deep loch provided a perfect moat against wild animals and strangers. A narrow wooden walkway connected the island to the shore. At night, they could pull the walkway back for total peace. The water laps gently against the stacked stones. The morning mist hides the small home from the shore. The crannog was a tiny private fortress floating in the calm, dark lake. In the deep wetlands of Iraq, builders used the plants growing all around them. They constructed elaborate, arched houses entirely out of bundled reeds. They tied the tall, flexible stalks together to form thick pillars and curved roofs. But reeds alone cannot keep the water out. So the builders used sticky black bitumen, scooped straight from the earth. This natural tar bubbled up from the ground nearby. They smeared the thick black paste over the roofs and floors to waterproof the homes. You can smell the sharp scent of the warm tar baking in the sun. The dark bitumen sealed every crack in the woven reeds. The houses sat right on the edge of the waterways. The golden reeds and the black tar created a striking contrast. The builders turned the soft marsh grass into strong, dry homes that could survive the seasonal floods. On the coast of North America, early people built monuments from the sea itself. Along the shores of Sapelo Island, hunter-gatherers constructed massive rings out of oyster shells. They piled millions of white shells into perfectly circular walls. Some of these bright rings are over 200 feet wide. They served as both grand architecture and enclosed village plazas. You can hear the crunch of the shells underfoot. The white walls gleam brightly in the hot coastal sun. Inside the ring, the sandy plaza is flat and calm. Small brush huts likely stood within the safe circle. The builders did not just throw their shells away. They used them to shape their living space. The massive rings show a deep tie to the ocean that fed them. The shell walls blocked the sea breeze and created a quiet, shared center for the whole village to gather. Some homes were provided by the earth and used for countless generations. In India, the rock shelters of Bhimbetka feature massive natural overhangs of sandstone. These deep stone roofs served as continuous human dwellings for over 100,000 years. The rock walls are layered with thousands of colorful paintings. The art shows the changing wildlife and hunting practices of the region over vast stretches of time. You can sit under the cool stone roof and look at the red and white figures. The warm afternoon sun lights up the painted animals. Generation after generation sat by the fire in this exact spot. They added their own stories to the crowded walls. The rock shelter never fell down or washed away. It just waited quietly for the next group of people to arrive. The painted walls hold the longest memory of human life in one single place. Deep underground, the world is completely black. To navigate the pitch-black depths of painted caves, early artists relied on a very specific rhythm of light. They carved shallow bowls from soft limestone. Then, they filled these small cups with animal fat. A simple moss wick was added to the center. This created a steady, smokeless flame. It was a gentle light that would not ruin the still air. You can imagine the soft glow pushing back the heavy darkness. The flickering flame cast warm shadows against the cold rock. It revealed the shapes of painted bulls and wild horses. This quiet light allowed them to work for hours in the deep earth. The rhythm of tending the flame became part of the art itself. It was a slow, careful process of keeping the dark at bay. The artists trusted this small fire to guide them safely back to the surface. The placement of these ancient paintings was never truly random. Early artists often chose the deepest, most resonant chambers of the limestone caves. They walked past perfectly smooth walls near the entrance. Instead, they sought out spaces where the acoustics were perfect. In these deep rooms, chanting and singing would echo beautifully. The sound bounced off the painted walls, turning the space into an immersive sanctuary. You can almost hear the low hum of voices filling the cavern. The painted animals might have seemed to move with the vibrations of the song. It was a place where sound and sight merged into one experience. The natural shape of the rock amplified every breath and every note. These deep chambers were chosen for how they felt, not just how they looked. The echoing songs gave life to the silent stone. The cave itself became a massive natural instrument. Music was already a vital part of this ancient world. The earliest known musical instruments are delicate flutes. They were carefully carved from the hollow wing bones of griffon vultures. Found in German caves, these small instruments are incredibly precise. The makers drilled the holes with great care and exact spacing. This allowed the flutes to play complex, pentatonic melodies. The high, clear notes would have echoed beautifully through the dark chambers. It is easy to picture someone sitting near the cave entrance at dawn. They might play a quiet song as the morning light filtered in. The sound of the bone flute is haunting and sweet. It brings a sense of calm to the vast wild landscape. This early music was a way to fill the silence of the ancient world. The careful carving shows a deep love for the sounds they could create. Leaving a mark on the world was a deeply personal ritual. The haunting hand stencils found in caves worldwide were created with great care. An individual would press their bare hand flat against the cold rock. Then, they would blow chewed pigment through a hollow bone tube. The fine mist of red or black color settled around their fingers. When they pulled their hand away, a perfect outline remained. It was a permanent signature left on the stone. This simple act connected the person directly to the earth. You can see the shapes of large hands and small ones. They are scattered across the walls like quiet waves from the past. The process required stillness and a steady breath. It was a moment of pausing in the dark to say, "I was here." The hollow bone acted like a delicate brush, painting with air and earth. Art was not always meant to be left on a wall. The famous Venus figurines were not just static objects to be looked at. Many of these small carvings show heavy wear and a deep polish. This smooth surface comes from constant, daily handling. They were likely deeply personal amulets, kept close at all times. People held them and rubbed them for comfort or protection. You can imagine rough, calloused hands gently turning the smooth limestone. The stone would grow warm from the heat of a palm. It was a quiet habit, a small rhythm of seeking reassurance. The figurine was a companion through long winters and difficult journeys. Its rounded shape was designed to fit perfectly in a closed hand. The polish tells a story of countless quiet moments by the fire. These small stones carried the hopes and worries of the people who held them. Sometimes, the act of making was purely about beauty. The meticulous crafting of colutrial laurel leaf points was an act of pure artistry. These flint blades were chipped so incredibly thin that they became translucent. They were far too fragile to ever be used for hunting. Instead, they were created solely as a display of master craftsmanship. The maker had to strike the stone with perfect, gentle precision. One wrong tap would shatter the delicate leaf of flint. Held up to the light, the edges of the stone glow softly. It is a breathtaking display of skill and patience. The creator spent hours shaping something that had no practical use. It was art made for the sheer joy of seeing what the hands could do. The thin stone feels like a fragile secret. It is a quiet reminder that early humans valued beauty just as much as survival. The soundtrack of every ancient camp was a steady, rhythmic beat. It was the sharp, clear clack of flint knapping. The constant striking of stone against stone was a daily chore. People shaped tools from dawn to dusk, filling the valleys with sound. A large nodule of dark flint would be struck with a rounded hammerstone. Sharp flakes flew off, slowly revealing the useful blade hidden inside. This rhythm was as natural as the sound of a heartbeat. It was the noise of a community preparing for the days ahead. You can picture someone sitting on a grassy hillside in the sun. They turn the stone over and over, looking for the right angle. The work requires focus, but the hands know the motions by heart. The ground around them slowly fills with discarded flakes. It is a peaceful, repetitive task that grounds the day in purpose. The rhythm of life for many hunters was dictated entirely by nature. In the Vezir Valley, this meant following the great reindeer migration. The people moved when the herds moved, crossing the vast snowy tundra. They relied on these animals for much more than just meat. The reindeer provided the raw materials for their entire way of life. Antlers were carefully carved to make strong, durable tools. Sinew was dried and separated to create tough thread for sewing. The thick hides were tanned and used to build warm tents. You can imagine a small group wrapped in heavy furs. They walk across a pale winter valley, watching the massive herd in the distance. Their journey was tied to the changing of the seasons. They moved lightly across the earth, leaving only footprints in the snow. The reindeer guided their path, offering everything they needed to survive the cold. Hunting could also be a highly coordinated communal event. The buffalo jump required entire tribes to work together for days. They would slowly and quietly herd bison toward a specific cliff edge. It was a delicate process of guiding the massive animals without startling them. People waved hides to direct the herd along the right path. Then, at the final moment, they created a sudden, chaotic stampede. The dust rose in the air as the herd rushed forward. This dramatic event provided enough food to help the community survive the winter. It was a massive undertaking that relied on perfect timing and deep trust. Everyone had a role to play in the dusty afternoon light. The success of the jump meant safety and warmth for the coming months. It was a powerful rhythm of cooperation, bringing the whole group together for a single, vital purpose. Gathering wild honey was a daring, highly prized seasonal event. Early humans would climb sheer cliffs or tall trees to reach the hives. They used fragile rope ladders woven from plant fibers. It was a brave climb, braving swarms of angry bees. The reward was the rare, calorie-dense sweetness of golden honeycomb. You can picture a figure clinging to a woven ladder on a rock face. They reach carefully into a natural crevice in the bright sun. The air is thick with the hum of the swarm. Extracting the honey required calm nerves and steady hands. This sweet treat was a rare luxury in a diet of meat and roots. The sticky golden prize was worth the danger of the climb. It was a moment of pure, intense flavor in a harsh world. The harvest was a quiet victory, celebrated back at the camp with sticky fingers. A defining seasonal rhythm of the Mesolithic era was the autumn harvest. Nomadic groups would gather in massive numbers for the hazelnut season. They came together to roast hundreds of thousands of hazelnuts in shallow pits. The warm afternoon sun mixed with the smoke of the roasting fires. This massive effort was all about preserving food for the long winter. The roasted nuts would keep for months without spoiling. You can see figures gathered around the smoking pits, surrounded by autumn foliage. The smell of roasting nuts filled the crisp air. It was a time of abundance and shared labor. People talked and worked together, turning a simple nut into a winter staple. The shallow pits glowed with warm embers as the day faded. This harvest was a comforting routine, a promise that they would not go hungry. The rhythm of the seasons guided every careful step. Processing acorns was a tedious but vital daily rhythm. Raw acorns are toxic and bitter, so they require careful preparation. Women spent hours grinding the hard nuts into a fine meal. Then, they had to leach the bitter tannins out using running water. They would place the meal in baskets and set them in sandy stream beds. The clear, shallow water washed over the ground acorns, slowly making them safe to eat. You can picture someone kneeling by a gentle stream in the morning sun. They carefully pour water over the basket, watching it drain through the sand. It was a slow, repetitive task that required immense patience. The sound of the running water provided a peaceful background to the work. This daily effort turned a bitter seed into a nourishing food. It was a quiet act of care, ensuring the community had enough to eat. Though rarely preserved, the weaving of plant fibers was a constant activity. It was a rhythmic background task in almost every ancient camp. People spent countless hours twisting flax, nettles, and bark into strong cords. These fibers were woven into the intricate baskets and nets that held their world together. You can imagine someone sitting by a calm lake at golden hour. Their hands move rapidly, twisting long green fibers into a complex fishing net. The work is repetitive and soothing, a quiet meditation at the end of the day. The rough texture of the bark softens as it is worked. These woven items were essential for carrying food and catching fish. They were lightweight, durable, and made entirely from the landscape around them. The rhythm of twisting and tying was a skill passed down through generations. It was the quiet, unseen labor that made daily life possible. Before the invention of fireproof pottery, cooking required clever solutions. Making soup involved a fascinating process known as stone boiling. People would heat smooth river rocks in a fire until they were glowing hot. Then, They used wooden tongs to drop the stones directly into a water-filled leather bag. The intense heat of the rock brought the broth to a rolling boil almost instantly. Steam would rise in thick clouds, lit by the warm firelight. You can hear the sharp hiss as the hot stone hits the water. It was a careful rhythm of heating rocks and moving them to the broth. The thick leather bag held the heat perfectly, cooking the meat and roots inside. This method turned simple ingredients into a rich, warm meal. It was a comforting ritual on a cold evening. The glowing stones brought the warmth of the fire directly into the food. Thousands of years before farming, people were already baking. Hunter-gatherers went through immense labor to create the first known flatbread. They gathered, threshed, and ground wild oat tubers into a rough flour. This multi-day process took place long before fields were ever planted. They baked the dark dough on hot stones in simple hearths. You can picture a figure kneeling by the fire, carefully watching the bread. The rough, dark flatbread bakes slowly, surrounded by woven baskets of wild grains. The smell of baking bread is one of the oldest comforts in the world. It was a dense, heavy food, full of energy for the days ahead. The firelight casts warm shadows on the stone hearth. This early baking was a labor of love and patience. It shows a deep understanding of the wild plants that grew around them. The simple flatbread was a quiet triumph of early cooking. With the dawn of agriculture came a grueling new daily rhythm. The saddle quern became the center of daily food preparation. Women spent hours every single day kneeling on the dirt floor. They pushed a heavy, smooth stone back and forth over a larger, flat rock. This exhausting motion was needed to grind tough wheat into edible flour. You can see the dust rising in the warm morning sun. The rhythmic scraping of stone on stone echoed through the early settlements. It was hard physical labor that left permanent marks on their bones. Yet this daily grind was the foundation of their new way of life. The crushed wheat provided the flour needed to feed growing families. The heavy stone was a constant companion, a tool of survival and care. This repetitive task tied them to the land and the crops they now grew. The creation of the first cheese was a practical rhythm of preservation. Early farmers needed a way to store dairy without it spoiling. They used specialized pottery vessels, pierced with dozens of small holes. Thick, curdled milk was poured into these clay bowls. The white liquid whey drained out the bottom, leaving the solid curds behind. You can picture the soft morning light hitting the rough clay. The slow drip of the whey was a quiet, steady sound. This simple straining process allowed them to keep food for much longer. It was a clever solution to the problem of a changing food supply. The pierced bowls were carefully made just for this purpose. The resulting cheese was a dense, rich food that could survive the warmer months. This daily routine of pouring and straining changed how people ate. It was a quiet revolution in the early kitchen. The brewing of early beer was likely a communal, ritualistic event. This thick, gruel-like drink was fermented in large stone vats. It was not a clear liquid, but a hearty, cloudy mixture. People consumed it collectively, sitting together around the heavy vats. They used long, hollow reed straws to drink the beer. These reeds helped filter out the bitter husks floating on the surface. You can imagine a group gathered in the warm firelight, sharing the drink. It was a moment of connection, a time to rest and talk. The shared vat brought everyone closer, reinforcing the bonds of the group. The brewing process itself was a careful rhythm of waiting and watching. The slow fermentation transformed simple grains into something special. This early beer was a reason to gather, a centerpiece for ancient celebrations. It was a comforting ritual that made the vast world feel a little smaller. The construction of massive monuments was fueled by incredible seasonal feasts. Thousands of people gathered in the midwinter to share the labor and the food. They consumed staggering amounts of roasted pork and beef during these events. The massive nighttime gatherings were lit by dozens of roaring fires. Figures roasted large cuts of meat on wooden spits, surrounded by circular timber houses. The intense firelight pushed back the deep winter chill. This feast was the energy source for hauling the great stones of nearby monuments. It was a time of immense noise, warmth, and shared purpose. The smell of roasting meat filled the cold night air. People traveled from far away to join this massive communal effort. The rhythm of the feast was just as important as the building itself. It brought a scattered population together into one unified force. The shared meal made the impossible work feel possible. A common daily habit was the chewing of birch bark pitch. This dark, sticky substance was useful for many different things. It was often chewed to soften it for use as a strong adhesive. But it also had mild antiseptic properties that helped relieve toothaches. You can picture a young person sitting on a log in a misty forest. They casually chew a dark lump of the pitch in the soft, diffused daylight. It was a simple, quiet remedy for the small pains of daily life. The pitch tasted earthy and sharp, a flavor of the deep woods. This habit was a small comfort, a way to soothe an aching mouth. The sticky resin was a natural medicine, found right on the trees. Chewing it became a familiar, rhythmic part of the day. It is a gentle reminder of how closely they knew the forest around them. A shocking medical ritual of this era was the practice of trepanation. Healers would use sharp flint tools to carefully scrape or drill a hole. They performed this terrifying procedure on a living person's skull. It was a delicate, dangerous operation that required immense skill and steady hands. Amazingly, many patients actually survived this intense surgery. We know this because the bone shows clear signs of healing afterward. You can imagine a healer working in the bright, clear daylight. The patient lies still on a woven mat, trusting the hands that work on them. It was a desperate attempt to cure illness or relieve pressure. The sharp flint was used with surprising precision and care. This ritual shows a deep desire to heal and protect life. It was a quiet, tense moment of ancient medicine. The healed bone is a testament to their resilience and their will to survive. The creation of personal identity was tied to the rhythmic trade of jewelry. Pierced seashells and animal teeth were strung into elaborate, beautiful necklaces. These small items were traded over vast distances, moving from hand to hand. They allowed people to display their connections, their travels, and their status. You can see a close view of hands carefully threading a thin sinew. They push the string through small, perfectly pierced seashells in the bright sunlight. The delicate shells clink softly together as the necklace takes shape. It was a slow, careful process of making something beautiful to wear. These ornaments were more than just decoration. They were a language of belonging. The shells carried the memory of distant oceans into inland valleys. Wearing them was a way to tell a story without speaking. The rhythm of trading these small treasures connected scattered groups across the ancient landscape. The deep emotional bond between humans and dogs is incredibly ancient. In many early cultures, dogs were given careful, ritualistic burials alongside their owners. They were not just working animals, they were valued companions. Sometimes, they were arranged affectionately, with the human's hand resting gently on the dog. You can picture a solemn burial scene in a shallow pit. The soft twilight falls over the figures laid to rest together. The human hand is placed over the curled-up dog, in a final gesture of care. It is a quiet, heartbreaking image of loyalty that outlasts death. This ritual shows how deeply intertwined their lives had become. The dogs shared the warmth of the fire and the dangers of the hunt. Burying them together ensured they would not be separated in the dark. It is a peaceful rhythm of honoring a friendship that helped them survive the wild. A deeply emotional ritual across this era was the use of red ochre. Mourners would grind this iron-rich clay into a fine, vibrant powder. They used it to cover their deceased loved ones in a rust-colored pigment. This bright red dust perhaps symbolized blood, or the return to the earth. You can imagine figures gently dusting the powder over a burial site. The shallow cave is lit by solemn dim daylight as they work. The vibrant color stands out sharply against the pale stone and soil. It was a final act of care, a way to honor the person they lost. The grinding of the ochre was a slow, meditative task for the grieving. The red pigment stained their hands as they prepared the site. This ritual brought a burst of color to the quiet darkness of the grave. It was a beautiful, lasting tribute to a shared life. In some early settlements, the dead were never truly gone. It was a standard ritual to bury deceased family members right inside the home. They were placed tightly curled beneath the plaster floors of the sleeping platforms. This kept the ancestors physically present in the daily life of the house. You can see figures carefully laying a body into a shallow pit. The room is made of mud brick, lit by dim interior light. They prepare to cover the site with fresh, white plaster, sealing it smoothly. The family would then sleep directly above their loved ones every night. It was a comforting rhythm of keeping the past close at hand. The house became a living monument to the people who built it. The ancestors were still part of the family, resting quietly beneath their feet. This ritual erased the line between the living and the dead. The oldest human footprints outside of Africa were found in English mud. They rested perfectly preserved for 800,000 years. You can almost picture the family walking along the ancient riverbank. The mud held the exact shape of their toes and heels. It was a quiet, fleeting moment, frozen in the earth. Researchers found them by chance, on a grey, overcast day. They took photographs quickly. The tide was already coming in. Just weeks later, the fragile estuarine mud washed away completely. The sea reclaimed the shore. Those ancient steps vanished back into the water. It is strange to think about how much history simply washes away. We only know they were there because someone looked down at the right time. The earth keeps its secrets well. Sometimes it only reveals them for a brief moment. Then the water rises, and the slate is wiped clean once again. The story of how humans reached the Americas was not rewritten by grand monuments. It was changed by something much smaller. In a dry cave in Oregon, researchers found fossilized human waste. These small coprolites sat undisturbed in the dust for thousands of years. They proved that people lived in this vast, arid basin long before anyone thought possible. The dates go back over 14,000 years. This was long before the famous Clovis culture arrived. The dry cave air acted like a perfect time capsule. It preserved the exact diet of those early travelers. You can almost feel the dry wind blowing across the sagebrush outside. The people who sheltered here left no massive stone temples. They simply left traces of a quiet daily life. It is a gentle reminder that history is not always carved in stone. Sometimes it is just left behind in the dust. Not far away, in another dry Oregon shelter, the dust held another quiet surprise. archaeologists uncovered dozens of intricately woven sandals. They were made entirely from sagebrush bark. These shoes are 10,000 years old. Yet they look incredibly modern. The weavers designed them with a flat, comfortable sole. They even included a clever wrap to protect the toes. You can see the careful, tight weave of the bark fibers. Someone sat in the dim light and twisted the tough brush into soft twine. They engineered a truly sophisticated piece of footwear. The design shows a deep understanding of comfort and travel. These were not crude coverings. They were crafted with real skill and care. It is easy to imagine a traveler slipping them on before a long walk. The dry earth kept them safe for millennia. They look as though they were just taken off yesterday. Travelers in colder climates had to invent different ways to move. High in the freezing passes of the Italian Dolomites, someone left behind a clever tool. It is a carefully crafted wooden snowshoe. The maker bent a frame of birch wood into a smooth oval. Then they strung it with tightly woven twine. This simple object is nearly 6,000 years old. It shows how early humans solved the problem of deep, treacherous snowdrifts. You can picture the bright, harsh sunlight reflecting off the white peaks. The air up there is thin and biting cold. Walking through deep snow is exhausting work. But with this wide, webbed frame, a person could glide over the surface. They engineered a brilliant solution using only wood and string. The snowshoe rests as a quiet testament to human resilience. It is a small piece of cleverness left behind in the ice. The ice of those same alpine peaks preserved the famous traveler known as Otzi. He died in the freezing cold over 5,000 years ago. But a tiny detail inside his body tells a strange story. Researchers found a specific type of moss frozen in his digestive tract. This moss only grows down in the warm, low-altitude valleys. It proved that just hours before he died, he was far below the snowline. He must have made a sudden, desperate climb upward. You can almost feel the panic of that steep ascent. He left the green forests behind and pushed into the biting wind. The moss is a tiny, silent witness to his final day. It tracks his exact path up the rocky slopes. We will never know exactly why he fled into the cold, but the plants he swallowed map out his last hurried steps. The frozen traveler carried another secret on his skin. He had 61 tattoos scattered across his body. But these marks were not meant to be decorative. They were simple parallel lines and small crosses. They were rubbed into his skin with dark charcoal. The strange part is exactly where they were placed. The marks sit almost exclusively over his joints and his lower back. His skeleton shows signs of severe arthritis in those exact same spots. This suggests the tattoos were an early form of medical treatment. It looks very much like a primitive kind of acupuncture. Someone carefully pierced his skin to help relieve his deep aching pain. You can imagine him sitting by a fire, seeking comfort for his tired bones. The dark lines are a very human detail. They show a quiet effort to heal a body worn down by a hard life. Another ancient medical detail was found far to the north in Sweden. It was hidden inside a 10,000-year-old piece of chewing gum. The gum is just a dark, hardened lump of birch bark resin. But it holds a hyper-specific story about the person who chewed it. The teeth marks belonged to a teenager. The resin captured their DNA and the bacteria in their mouth. It revealed that this young person had a severe case of periodontitis. They were likely losing their teeth to gum disease at a very early age. You can almost feel the dull ache in their jaw. They probably chewed the tough resin to soothe the pain. It is a strangely intimate thing to know about someone from so long ago. We do not know their name or their family, but we know exactly how their teeth hurt on a cold, overcast day. Early humans were capable of much more complex medicine too. The oldest known surgical amputation happened 31,000 years ago. It took place in the lush, rugged jungles of Borneo. A young person had their lower left leg carefully removed. The cut was incredibly precise. The bone healed so cleanly that the person survived for years afterward. This was not a crude accident. It was a deliberate, careful surgery. The healers must have known how to stop the bleeding. They likely used jungle plants to prevent infection. You can picture the patient sitting near a cave entrance, carving wood in the bright sunlight. Their community clearly cared for them long after the surgery. They made sure the young person could still live a full life. It is a beautiful story of survival. It shows a deep, quiet compassion that existed long before modern hospitals were ever built. Healing required tools, and early humans were master makers. The oldest known piece of string in the world was found in France. It is a tiny, delicate fragment of twisted bark fiber. This little brown cord is 50,000 years old. It proves that Neanderthals understood the complex math of twisting fibers. They knew how to combine multiple strands to create strong, durable cords. You can imagine someone sitting in the dim forest light, rolling the bark against their leg. They twisted 3 separate plies together to lock the tension in place. It is a brilliant piece of quiet engineering. String changed everything. It allowed people to tie bags, build nets and secure tools. This tiny fragment rests on a rough piece of flint. It looks so fragile now. but it represents a massive leap in how early people shaped the world around them. Neanderthals also manufactured the world's first synthetic material. In Italy, they created a strong birch bark pitch glue. Making this sticky resin was not simple. It required a highly specific, temperature-controlled process. They had to build an underground smoldering fire. If the fire got too hot, the bark would just burn away. If it was too cool, the resin would never form. They carefully tended the smoking mounds of earth to get it just right. This proves they possessed complex, multi-step engineering skills. You can smell the sharp, earthy smoke drifting through the trees. They extracted the dark, sticky glue to attach stone blades to wooden handles. It was a slow, deliberate task. They understood the hidden properties of the wood. They knew exactly how to coax the glue out of the bark. It is a quiet reminder of their deep, practical intelligence. Later toolmakers in France left behind a very puzzling object. For decades, archaeologists were baffled by carved pieces of antler. They called them batons of command. Each one had a single smooth hole drilled right through the center. They looked like strange, ceremonial scepters. But their real purpose was much more practical. They are now believed to be highly specific tools for making spears. Hunters used them to straighten wooden shafts. They would heat the wood over a warm fire to make it soft. Then they used a hole in the antler to apply leverage. They gently bent the warm wood until it was perfectly straight. You can picture the careful, quiet work by the glowing hearth. It took patience and a steady hand. The mysterious baton was simply a clever wrench. It helped them craft the perfect, balanced spear for the hunt. On the island of Okinawa, early humans crafted a different kind of hunting tool. In a limestone cave, researchers found the world's oldest known fish hooks. They are over 23,000 years old. The makers carefully carved them from the thick, pale shells of sea snails. These tiny crescent-shaped tools are beautifully smooth. They allowed people to catch freshwater fish in the island's gentle streams. You can imagine the cool water rushing over dark river stones. Someone sat by the edge, dropping the delicate shell hook into the current. It took incredible skill to carve the brittle shell without breaking it. They had to shape the perfect curve to catch a fish. These small hooks changed how the islanders lived. They unlocked a whole new source of food. The tiny shell crescents are a perfect blend of art and survival. They are simple, elegant, and deeply clever. In South Africa, early humans found a brilliant way to carry water. They used hollowed-out ostrich eggshells as lightweight, durable canteens. The pale shells were perfect for the hot, dry landscape, but they faced a very human problem. When everyone uses the same kind of shell, how do you know which one is yours? To prevent theft, They engraved the shells with complex geometric patterns. These specific, intricate lines acted as personal ownership marks. You can see the deep scratches standing out against the smooth shell. Someone sat in the bright midday sun, carving their unique signature. It is a strangely modern concept. They wanted to protect their property. The engraved lines are beautiful, but they served a very practical purpose. They tell a story of community, trust, and the need for personal boundaries. The shells rest on the red sand, holding the quiet echoes of daily life. The small sandstone block found in Spain holds another kind of carved record. It is believed to be the world's oldest known map. The stone is over 13,000 years old. Its flat surface is covered in faint, intricate etched lines. These scratches are not random. They form a highly specific, recognizable engraving of the surrounding landscape. You can clearly see the mountains, the winding rivers, and the best places to forage. It is a perfect miniature guide to the valley. Someone sat on a bed of dry moss and carefully recorded their world. They wanted to remember the safest paths and the best hunting grounds. You can almost feel the rough texture of the stone in your hand. It was a vital tool for survival. The map shows a deep, intimate knowledge of the earth. It is a quiet, beautiful attempt to make sense of a vast wilderness. In a Siberian cave, archaeologists found an object of pure, astonishing beauty. It is a 40,000-year-old bracelet made of green chlorite. The stone is polished to a brilliant glassy shine. But the most surprising detail is a perfectly round hole drilled through the center. Creating a hole this precise required a high-speed rotary drill. Experts did not think that kind of technology existed for another 30,000 years. Yet here it is, resting on a rough rock ledge. A beam of sunlight catches the smooth green curve of the stone. The maker must have spent countless hours spinning a drill to pierce the hard mineral. They polished it until it felt like silk against the skin. It was not a tool for survival. It was made simply to be beautiful. The bracelet is a quiet, stunning reminder of how much we still do not know about the past. Deep within a cave in Germany, another artist carved a tiny masterpiece. They shaped a delicate water bird from a piece of mammoth ivory. The miniature sculpture is over 30,000 years old. It perfectly captures the sleek, aerodynamic posture of a cormorant mid-dive. The artist must have spent hours watching the birds by the river. They noticed how the wings folded back, and the neck stretched out. You can see that quiet, careful observation in every smooth line. The tiny bird rests on a piece of rough limestone. It is illuminated by the soft, warm glow of a small animal fat lamp. The carving is so small it fits easily in the palm of a hand. It serves no practical purpose at all. It is simply a moment of restful wonder, frozen in ivory. It shows a deep appreciation for the graceful movement of the natural world. Not far away, another artist took on a much more massive project. The Lion Man is a tall, striking figure, carved from a mammoth tusk. It has the body of a human and the head of a cave lion. Experimental archaeology revealed a staggering fact about this specific piece. Carving this figure with sharp flint tools would have taken 400 hours. That is 400 hours of continuous, dedicated work. You can picture the artist sitting by the firelight, slowly scraping away the hard ivory. The cave is quiet, filled only with the sound of flint on bone. This was not something made in a single afternoon. It required immense patience and a clear, unwavering vision. The community must have supported the artist while they worked. The Lion Man is a masterpiece of prehistoric devotion. It is a strange, beautiful dream brought slowly into the waking world. Artists in France invented something even more playful. They created a primitive form of animation. They carved a small, round bone disc. On one side, they etched the delicate outline of a standing doe. On the other side, they carved the same doe in motion. They suspended the disc on a twisted natural fiber string. When you pull the string tight, the disc spins rapidly. The two images blur together. It creates the perfect illusion of a single running animal. You can imagine the flickering light of the cave wall behind it. Someone spun the toy, and the little deer suddenly sprang to life. It is a brilliant, joyful trick of the eye. They understood how vision works long before cameras were ever dreamed of. The spinning bone is a tiny magical invention. It brought a moment of pure delight to a dark, quiet evening. Some caves held much darker, stranger sights. Deep inside Chauvet Cave, explorers found an enormous cave bear skull. It was deliberately placed on a large, flat limestone block. The stone looked exactly like a quiet, hidden altar. Dozens of other massive bear skulls surrounded the block in the shadows. This was not a random pile of bones. It was a careful, intentional arrangement. It hints at a strange, lost ritual honoring the massive predators. You can almost feel the heavy silence in the dark cavern. The flickering light of a torch casts long shadows across the bone. The people who walked here clearly felt a deep reverence for the bears. They shared the dangerous landscape with these giant creatures. The altar is a haunting, beautiful mystery. It is a silent tribute to the raw power of the natural world, hidden far below the earth. At the massive stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, people worshipped a different animal. The builders had a strange, intense obsession with foxes. Foxes were not a primary food source for them. Yet their teeth were frequently pierced and worn as delicate jewelry. You can see the small, sharp teeth strung on thin leather cords. Fox motifs also dominate the massive, carved stone pillars of the site. The sleek shape of the animal is everywhere. The bright sunlight casts deep shadows over the carved stone. We do not know why the fox was so important to them. Perhaps it was a symbol of cleverness, or a guide to the spirit world. The obsession is hyper-specific and entirely mysterious. The little fox teeth rest quietly against the monumental stone. They are a small, strange detail in one of the oldest temples on Earth. As people settled down to farm, their engineering became incredibly precise. In Germany, archaeologists discovered a 7,000-year-old wooden water well. It was built using incredibly complex interlocking carpentry joints. The builders used perfect mortise and tenon connections to hold the thick oak planks together. This proves that early farmers were master woodworkers. They did this thousands of years before the invention of metal saws. You can see the deep square well lined with the fitted wood. The bright midday sun shines down into the clear water. The corners fit together so tightly that no earth can slip through. They shaped the hard oak using only stone tools and immense patience. It is a quiet triumph of early design. The well provided clean, reliable water for the whole village. It stands as a beautiful example of how careful, deliberate work can last for millennia. The builders of Skara Brae in Scotland enjoyed an even greater luxury. They had indoor plumbing. This was a comfort that most of Europe would not see again until the Romans. The villagers built narrow, stone-lined drains right under their houses. These channels flushed waste directly into the sea. They cleverly diverted small streams to keep the water flowing. You can picture the glowing hearth inside the circular stone house. Beneath the flagstone floor, the hidden water runs quietly in the dark. It is a remarkably clean and organized way to live. The village sits on a harsh, windy coast. Yet inside, they engineered a perfectly comfortable home. They understood how to move water exactly where they wanted it. The stone drains are a small, brilliant detail. They show that ancient life was not always rough and dirty. Sometimes, it was surprisingly refined. Those same Scottish islands hold a strange, living secret. The common voles found on the Orkney Islands are genetically distinct from mainland British voles. They do not belong there naturally. They were accidentally imported 5,000 years ago by Neolithic farmers. The tiny brown animals stowed away on small wooden boats crossing from mainland Europe. You can imagine a little vole peeking out from a woven basket of grain. The boat rocks gently on the cold grey water. When the farmers landed, the voles scurried ashore and made a new home. They are a living artifact of ancient sea travel. The farmers brought sheep and seeds on purpose. But they brought the voles entirely by accident. Today, the little creatures still run through the island grass. They are a quiet, furry reminder of the long journeys made by early sailors. Scattered across the Scottish mainland are hundreds of mysterious objects. They are perfectly round, fist-sized stone balls. Each one is carved with intricate, symmetrical knobs and geometric patterns. You can see one resting on a bed of green moss in the soft daylight. The stone is cold and heavy in the hand. Despite centuries of careful study, their specific purpose remains entirely unknown. Some think they were weapons. Others believe they were standard weights for trading. They might have been purely ritual objects used in lost ceremonies. The makers spent countless hours carving the 6 protruding knobs until they were perfectly smooth. The stones are beautiful, strange and deeply silent. They offer no clues to their true meaning. They are simply left behind in the grass. They are a perfect, unsolved puzzle from a world we can only try to imagine. A different kind of mystery echoes underground in Malta. The Hal Saflieni Hypogeum is a vast, subterranean complex carved from limestone. Deep inside, there is a small dark niche, known as the Oracle Chamber. This specific carved space possesses a strange acoustic property. Any sound made at exactly 110 Hz resonates perfectly. The deep tone travels throughout the entire underground maze. It creates a heavy, calming echo that vibrates in your chest. You can see the smooth, curved walls illuminated by the warm glow of an oil lamp. The builders may have designed it this way on purpose. A chanting voice would sound like it was coming from the stone itself. It is a deeply peaceful, almost hypnotic effect. The ancient architects understood how to shape sound just as well as they shaped stone. The quiet echo still lingers in the dark. Our walk through the Stone Age is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well,